So welcome back. So we have a very important panel. So, we may not see all the slides, but the slides will be available to you. So our panel is to discuss our enterprise ready for the IPv6 transformation. It's an important panel. We have 9 panelists, and we're actually going to go through the order that I have on the slide. So we'll have Microsoft, Google, DoD Research and Education Network, Heise Online, which is a magazine, CERN, the Belgian federal government, oh God, KULeuven, is that good? KULeuven University, Continental, the Automotive, and then Airbus. The way we're going to do the panel is each speakers, they're not going to stand up, but they're going to talk from where they are going to walk you through their IPv6 transformation. And I thought this was very important to actually do this to start with, because I wanted all of you to realize where they are. And what is also very noteworthy is that this is a wide-ranging set of enterprise customers, and all of them have IPv6 plan. So that in itself is a very important data point. And then at the end, I have 3 questions that I will ask my panelists. Not all of them will have time to answer, and if they choose to do so, then we may not get to all the questions, but that's okay as well. So it's not really rigid. And please, if you have questions that you would like to ask them, don't hesitate to come to the mic as well. So with this, let's go to Microsoft and Todd.
So I won't spend a lot of time introducing myself other than I'm the IT guy that tries to support a really large software development company. So I don't represent the products. I'm just the guy trying to support them. So we started deploying v6 a long time ago to support the development and research community, excuse me, when they were beginning to build the first stack that they built. So that was around 2001. We used GRE tunnels between buildings. We found that didn't scale very well, but we really didn't have any other choices at the time. So in about 2004 or so, we really started to do a full deployment of v6 across, particularly the Seattle area campus, what we call our Puget Sound campus. The reason why we felt we could actually get going at that point is we're a fairly heavy Cisco shop, and they were actually starting to get it deployed in their hardware, which we knew that trying to run v6 in software wasn't going to scale for us and meet our needs. So that's really why we started to deploy about that time. In addition to deploying native in v4 in a dual stack environment, we also deployed ISATAP worldwide in 2002 and based it on Windows servers, which was a really bad idea, because it did not follow our physical topology, so we just had servers in specific locations. It didn't scale very well, as you can imagine, and it took us a while to where we felt comfortable enough to where we could deploy it on network hardware. And at that point in, say, 2007 is when we actually could really start deploying ISATAP onto network hardware. And we could then, at that point, follow our physical topology, which helped immensely in making sure that it was a robust enough solution. That does mean that if you are a v6-enabled client on our corporate network, no matter where you are in the world, you will get a v6 address, whether it's ISATAP or a native. So where we sit today is we've enabled v6 on all of our infrastructure. So that means we've built v6 management and our point-to-points, our loopbacks, all of that is in place. We still manage via v4, but we have made sure that the deployment is v6 ready from a management perspective. As I said, we've deployed ISATAP worldwide. I would really like to get rid of ISATAP. It's a transition technology, and we've talked a little bit about transition technologies, and they are painful to support. They're hard to troubleshoot, and they're just a pain. Let's just leave it at that. We haven't deployed v6 into all of our user segments because we have parts of Microsoft that you know, they're an admin function, or they're selling software, so they don't need v6. They would like to have it maybe, but we really focused on our development and our research groups and organizations to make sure they were v6 enabled. And another piece to that was why we didn't go to full deployment is we had some tooling challenges And we didn't feel like we had the operational staff that could support a full deployment of that. Finally, the last of the tool pieces are in place. We've gotten the right software from the hardware vendors. We've gotten the right tools. They're being deployed as we speak. So that means we now have a project in flight to deploy the rest of the environment. So from a user perspective, you will still have ISOTAP until we've completely deployed, but you will have a dual stack anywhere in our network after that point. Data centers is a little bit more challenging because of the topology that's within the data center. If you're not behind a firewall or a load balancer, you are V6 enabled. There are some work in progress around making sure that the firewalls that we use will support V6 in the scale that we need it to. And then, of course, there's making sure the load balancers are also fit that model and can actually scale to meet the V4 and V6 needs. Load balancers are a little bit of an interesting challenge. Whether we do, for a V4 perspective, we've always done NAT in a load balancer. So from a V6 perspective, do we do NAT or do we not? So that's a decision that's still in flight about how we're going to solve or what solution we're going to use there. As far as V6 internet facing remember, I'm the IT shop, not the online, so I'm the corporate guys. But we do leverage our online sister organization for any of our internet egress perspectives. And we have that available both from our internal network in the Seattle area, and we have a dedicated, what we call a raw internet connection. So it is just open internet. So both of those are V6 enabled. So that's kind of where we sit today. We've been doing it for a long time. We've learned a lot. There's lots of operational challenges. It's around training and making sure your operations staff is ready to go from a V6 perspective.
Thank you, Todd. And just a plug for tonight's panel, so to make sure everybody stays around. Our panel is going to be talking about the pain points in the deployment. So please stay around. This should be a good panel as well. So the next talk is Irena, and she's going to talk to us about Google.
Hi, my name is Irena, and I'm a network engineer at Google, working mainly on the enterprise network. So I've been involved in most of the IPv6 initiatives of the company up to present. So first, I just wanted to give a brief overview of how our corporate network looks like. It's a heterogeneous environment with more than 200 locations and distributed offices across the globe, basically. We have different connectivity options like MPLS, ISP, transit, and so on. And we support more than 30,000 employees. With basically, you can imagine we have a multitude of different networking devices. We use different vendors as well. Can we go to the next slide? Yeah, so in terms of our IPv6 deployment, we started planning the IPv6 deployment in 2007 because basically at that time there were not too many public tunnel or broker services available. So it was like everyone was getting like, they wanted to get their hands dirty with IPv6. So that really kind of helped us to go ahead and deploy it in our corporate network. Where are we today? Around 99% of all employees have IPv6 access at their desks, either native or using GRE tunnels at the locations where this is not, where native access is not an option. There is still a lot to be done to support IPv6 across our internal tools and applications, but in terms of network, we are basically already dual stacked and ready to go. We are actually already on the next step, I would say, because we are looking into deploying IPv6 only networks, and we have a real technical driver for that because we are a large enterprise running out of private RFC 1918 IPv4 addresses. So that's why we really need to, dual stack is great, but it's not really helpful for us because we really need to look for a way to conserve IPv4 space. And yeah, that's basically. There is still a lot of work to be done towards IPv6 only networks, but we are working hard towards it.
Thank you. So our next speaker is Ron, and he's going to talk to us about the DoD Research and Education Network.
Yeah, so I actually serve in a number of roles across the federal government, which gives me some benefit of a lot of different perspectives, both from hands-on doing things over many years and then a lot of recent work in a lot of the different federal agencies. For DREN, which is an ISP for the DoD research community, I'm the chief engineer for that, and that's where we did a lot of our initial work many years ago. Also, I chair one of the U.S. Navy working groups, which is deploying IPv6 across the U.S. Navy. SPAWAR is an enterprise that is part of the U.S. Navy, which provides IT services and acquires IT technology across the Navy, and have done a lot of work there in IPv6. And then more recently, since the new mandates came out with the federal government, I've been working on the U.S. Federal IPv6 Task Force to deal with those major bureaucracies and trying to get them deploying IPv6.
Hey, Ron, can you just explain to the audience that it's European mainly, the different deadlines the federal agencies have to deal with?
The federal deadline is that by September of 2012, all public-facing services from all federal agencies must be dual stack, native dual stack. And there's a 2014 deadline, which is for September 2014. Internal systems, mostly clients that need to talk to the public internet, must be dual stack or IPv6 enabled as well. So those are the deadlines we're working on. So the initiatives we had within DREN and SPAWAR, since they're research organizations, they've typically pioneered a lot of networking work over many years. They have a project to aggressively deploy IPv6 within their organizations. They want to be years ahead of everyone else, mainly to find out what are the issues, what are the bugs, what are the lessons learned to help others as it gets deployed into other operational networks or other federal agencies. Within the federal agencies, we have the new mandate that I just mentioned. And then the status within these networks, for DREN and SPAWAR, it's been in production for over 11 years. Dual stack, native, and that's been the approach for transition. Avoiding things like translation, avoiding tunnels, and that's really been beneficial. For SPAWAR, it's unique in that it's 100% dual stack, down to the client level, back office, everything, everywhere is 100% dual stack native, and it's been that way for quite a number of years. And so that was a fairly aggressive initiative in itself to try to accomplish that. We've learned a lot. The other piece is the network management, which is usually on a separate security LAN or management LAN, is going to IPv6 only. We have almost all of the IPv4 turned off, and a lot of the challenge there was just getting IPv6 to work across all the devices. The new challenge has been when we've turned off IPv4, we're finding bugs that no one's ever seen before because they've never run their devices and appliances with IPv4 turned off. In the federal agencies, it has been really sluggish because when you're dealing with bureaucracies of millions of employees where IT staff has been outsourced to other organizations, often just contractors who have had no IPv6 experience, trying to get them to come up with decent plans for deploying IPv6 has just been an enormous challenge. A lot of training, a lot of upgrades required, and so that's been pretty sluggish. Next slide. So our top challenges, and this is mostly for the later panel that we'll be doing later this afternoon, but just to run through them really quick. Biggest problems are lack of IPv4, IPv6 feature parity. We just still find a lot of features missing. Vendors not eating their own dog food. They expect us to try this stuff and find the bugs. They don't use it in their own networks. Privacy addresses for the enterprise. That is really hurting us because we need stable addresses for things like forensics, logging, and a number of other reasons. And so we have to try to disable privacy addresses, and that's very painful. And that probably is not going to scale in the long run. Lack of DHCPv6 client support because we have a lot of XP, a lot of things older than Mac OS X Lion and other operating systems that do not have DHCPv6 client support has forced us to stick with Slack and static addresses and not try to do everything with DHCP. Network management over v6 is not quite there, but getting very close. Operational complexity. Once you run dual stack a long time, you realize it would be really nice if I could turn off v4. And because things like managing firewalls and trying to keep it all in sync is a real pain once you have to do that. And then what we're seeing in the federal agencies is bad planning in major organizations is due to no operational experience with v6. And there are serious mistakes, especially in the addressing plans. If you look at all their addressing plans, it looks like they have pure IPv4 thinking. They're being conservative. They hate things like /64s for subnets because it's wasteful. /48s for an organization that's just incredible. Anybody would be insane. We're just going to run v6 out of addresses very quickly if we keep doing that. So that's some of the battles we're up against. It's the old IPv4 thinking. So those are our top challenges.
And again, this is for the latter panel, but this is a very important data point given that you've been doing this for so long. So the next speaker is Johannes. Is that right? Go ahead.
Yes, hello. I'm Johannes Endres. I used to be a network engineer, but for some time now my focus has changed to journalism. I'm currently the editor-in-chief of a part of Heise Online, which is a quite well-known IT site in Germany and for all the German-speaking area. As a content provider, we've actually found a way to make money out of IPv6, and that is by telling people about it. We're covering IPv6 extensively in our magazines, on the online site. We're having a roadshow. We're actually hosting the largest IPv6 conference in Europe for some time now. We started doing that in 2009. And so our way of eating our own dog food is to turn our server dual stack after telling people how to do that. And so on our website, we have dual stack in production since 2010. Yes, please. On the other side, we're a small company. We have 600 employees in the whole media group we belong to. We're only spread over 9 locations, so we don't have too much of a IT department that can do their own research or can dive too deep into developing IPv6 stuff. So they're basically can only do what we are talking about. We decided to be very careful about turning our company network, our client network, dual stack, which is the plan. What we'll actually will do is to turn everything that's internet facing, the DMZ servers like DNS and SMTP and everything, dual stack. And we'll have IPv6 native to some client workstations for the developers and for some testing environments. And then we'll stop further deployment into the client network first and await what will happen and wait for more experience. The reason why we're doing that is mainly the points that Ron already mentioned. We don't have operational experience in our IT staff, so they have to learn that firsthand. And the other reason is that I'm reviewing IPv6 hardware and software on a regular basis. It's part of my job to do that for our magazines. And almost everything I saw up to now has serious bugs. There is always bugs that will bite us, including some Windows bugs. So as a company, as an enterprise, we're definitely ready to go dual stack, to deploy IPv6. But what we see, what is offered by vendors, is not. So we don't feel that we don't get the products we need to have IPv6 on the same SLA in our network as we have with IPv4. And that's why we'll stop further deployment after the steps I just mentioned for some time being.
And I'm hoping you are letting the vendors know that that's the reason you're doing this, right?
Yes, definitely. As I said, we review that for our magazines, and I hope they read what we found.
But it's a very important data point. The wide range of readiness in products is really an operational issue, which we need, all of us need to go to address heads on. So very good. Thank you. So the next